guys, I'm Oscar and welcome to Scouting for Goals. In this weekly series I show you how I use the Fantasy Football Scouts members area to help me with my FPL decisions. If you're not a member yet, you can sign up through the link in the description below and get a 20% discount. For this video, I posted a question on Twitter to tell me your FPL dilemmas, so thank you for sending in your questions. I'm not able to answer them all in this video, but there were a couple of players that appeared frequently, so I will focus my attention on them because there's probably many of you who own them as well. And the question is if we should sell these players or not. I will rate these players from 1 to 5 in terms of 3 aspects, just to give you a feel for how I view them as assets going forward. The first area that I will judge them on is how well they are doing in the algorithm score on Fantasy Football Scout. The second area I will rate them on is how good value for money they are, and that will be based on those projected points that we found in the algorithm divided by their price. The third quality I will judge them on is my subjective view on them, and where I'll discuss factors such as tactical aspects that might have affected their performances. Let's call this the eye test. And this is the list of players: Target, Barnes, Mahrez, Gundugan and Rafinha. First up, Target. Let's get the defender out of the way immediately. On the screen you see 2 tables. First, the projected points, and secondly, I have created a table for the midfielder's attacking stats. Let's start scoring him on his qualities. In terms of his projected points, it's fairly decent in the immediate 2 fixtures. You won't find much higher scores in that price range, so I'll give him a 3 in that regard. And the value is pretty decent, so I'll give him a 3.5 there. What does the eye test say? Should managers sell Target? Well, this depends on your plan and your team overall. If you have no other fires to put out, I could see you moving him on to someone like Tsimikas. That said, transferring defenders is something I try to do very sparingly, and I'm not sure of any other 5.0 or below defenders who looks to provide particularly good value right now. If I had to pick one, it would be Soufal, but only if the rest of your team looks flawless. Reguilon and the Brighton defenders should be a little bit better than Target as well. Aston Villa, they didn't have a great start and I'm not keen on their defense, but the fixtures are still quite good, so all in all, the eye test, I'll score him a 2.5. Let's move on to Harvey Barnes. In terms of projected points, we can see that Barnes isn't doing that great. Rafinha, as we see, is preferred by the algo for a cheaper price, and there's of course Benrahma that you could transfer in as well. With that said, Barnes should take along during the upcoming weeks, and no fixture is particularly hard, so you won't need to bench him. So let's give him a rating of 3 on the projected points. In terms of value, I said there's better value elsewhere, but he's still decent if you look at the grand scheme of things. There are very few players that will be outstandingly better value than Barnes, so I'll give him a score of 3.5. Lastly, what about the eye test? Wolves played very well versus Leicester, and I think there are better fixtures to come for Barnes. West Ham and Norwich mixed up. They both looked pretty open at the back in their premieres. All in all, Barnes wouldn't strike me as an immediate concern. It's just the fact that Benrahma looks especially good that makes me tempted to make that switch myself. If you already own Benrahma, then it's an easier hold. Rolling the free transfer or selling Barnes for Benrahma, both should be considered as plays that have positive expected value, to use a nerdy term, meaning it's a win-win whatever you do, which is a positive. I'll score Barnes 2.5 on the eye test. His decision making was quite poor last game, and you can see in the table that his dribbling was not on point whatsoever, and his expected goal involvement was way lower than I like to see. But as mentioned, he does have great fixtures, and he also just signed a new contract, which implies that the manager really rates him. There's a risk that Barnes starts on the bench and he doesn't seem fit enough to play 90 even if he was to start. Last season he was only fit in one of the meetings versus West Ham, but in that game he played 90 minutes, which suggests that Brendan Rodgers is aware of the fact that it should be a good matchup for Barnes on paper with a lot of counter-attacking opportunities. This gives him an overall score of 9. By the way, you might have observed that I haven't included Target in this historical performance table because things like shots in the box and penalty area touches are going to be interesting for midfielders, but rare occurrences for defenders, and it's not fair to judge target on the same grounds as the midfielders. Next up is Mahrez. In terms of projections, it looks great. Upcoming 4, especially next game. I'm going to rate him a 4 here. And when I rate him in terms of value for money, I have to just think short term because that's the dilemma owners face. And I'll give him a rating of 4.5 here. Moving on to the eye test, I think Mahrez has been bashed at unfairly. People are saying that he was trash, and that's just not true. Manchester City struggled as a whole, but Mahrez tried his best. You can see that he succeeded with his dribblings, and he had the highest expected goals involvement on this list, meaning he took up fairly good positions. I am a bit surprised to see people having such a tough time on deciding if they should keep Mahrez. I said earlier regarding Barnes that whether you transfer him out or not, both those results should have a positive expected outcome. With Mahrez, I would say it's the other way around actually. I would say that it's a lose-lose. And what do I mean by that? It's lose because if you transfer him out, it's very possible that he bangs. And if you don't transfer him out, it's very possible that he is benched, and that would suck. But of course, there's a positive scenario, and that is if you start him and he bangs. And that is quite likely, in my opinion. And if you went for Mahrez, this was the game week. This was the whole point of having him in your game week 1 team, so he could bang in game week 2. You took the gamble, you played the pep roulette, and now that KDB is back, this should just benefit Mahrez and of course City as a whole. All in all, giving him a score on the eye test is a little bit tricky because it all depends on him starting or not, but I'll give him a 3 at least because of the high upside and the fact he is ahead of many other City players in terms of fitness. The fixture is of course amazing, and we saw how easy Liverpool had versus Norwich. This gives Mahrez an overall score of 11.5. Now let's look at Gundugan. When we see the projected points, they either have not updated or they ignore the fact that Gundugan might be out for a couple of weeks. Maybe we know more regarding his fitness closer to deadline. Let me first just say that if he is injured, it's an easy sell for me. But let's say that he seems likely to play, then his projected points are very good, and I'll rate him a 4 from the stats that we do have available to us. And in terms of value, he's good. He's a good pick. I'll rate him a 4 on the value score. Now for the analysis part, I would like to just take a moment and think back to why I was keen myself to own Gundugan for Game Week 1, and that was the prospect of him potentially playing more advanced role, like he did a lot in the last season. He did that to an extent as well this Game Week 1. We can see that he had 4 touches in the opposition's box, which was the same as the other assets included in this table. But with Kevin De Bruyne looking like he'll be back to starting pretty soon, I don't think Gundu provides great value at his price, so I disagree with the algo a little bit there. And Manchester City looks just as slow started as last season. On the other hand, they play Norwich, and the near future is more important to consider. That's why you are wondering what to do with him right now. Lastly, Rafinha Leeds always play attractive offensive football, but their fixtures aren't great and they got battered by United, which isn't a great look. His projected points is quite good, as we can see, despite the tough fixtures. I'll give him a 3.5 based on what we see here in the projected points. He almost scored in Game Week 1, and I think he should have. This led to a decent expected goal involvement when he missed that big chance. He is really good value, there's still no denying that, and I'm gonna rate him a 4 on the value scale. Now on to the eye test. Rafinha is always lively, but him and Leeds didn't completely look themselves in that opening game. Based on his and the team's performance, you would say to dump him maybe, but also remember that Leeds had an awful time at Old Trafford last season, and I don't think even that was with the audience. Short-term fixtures aren't great, but I'm still willing to bet that in 4 or 5 weeks' time you'll be wanting him back. I'm more confident in a season's worth of info than one game, even if it is the most recent. On that note, I'm going to give him a rating of 3.5, giving him an overall score of 11. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you disagree or agree with these scores, and if you have any more dilemmas up to the deadline. I'll try my best to answer you in the comment section, both here on YouTube as well as on the original Twitter thread. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to get more content like this. Take care, and I hope you have a great game week.